Welcome to a quiet place for tired minds, a series of calm reflections for overwhelmed humans living in a noisy world. Today, I'd like to talk about something we rarely admit out loud, not because we're ashamed of it, but because we quietly assume everyone else has already solved it, not knowing, not knowing where life is leading, not knowing whether we're making the right decision, not knowing if things will work out, or whether the path we're walking today will still make sense a year from now. Somewhere along the way, many of us start believing that uncertainty was a problem to fix, that by a certain age, we should have everything neatly arranged, a clear purpose, a 5-year plan, confidence in every decision, a career that makes sense, relationships that never leave us questioning, a future we can predict. But life has a curious way of refusing to fit inside our plans. Sometimes the job disappears. Sometimes a relationship ends. Sometimes a dream quietly changes shape. Sometimes we wake up one morning and realize the person we were becoming is no longer the person we wish to be. And perhaps that's where so much unnecessary suffering begins. Not because life changes, but because we believe it wasn't supposed to. A few evenings ago, I found myself sitting quietly by the sea. The sun was beginning its slow descent towards the horizon. The breeze carried the familiar scent of salt and summer. The waves arrived one after another, without hurry, without apology, without asking anyone for permission. I watched them for a long time. Each wave was different. Some reached further onto the shore. Some dissolved almost immediately. Some arrived gently. Others crushed with surprising force. Yet none of them seemed concerned about whether they were the right kind of wave. None of them compared themselves to the one before. None of them hesitated because they couldn't see the entire ocean ahead. They simply arrived, and then they let go. Watching them, I wondered, when did we become so afraid of not knowing? A sea doesn't question whether spring will come. Birds don't ask for a map before they begin the migration. The sea doesn't stop making waves simply because it cannot see every shore it will touch. Nature seems remarkably comfortable with uncertainty. Perhaps because uncertainty has never been its enemy. Only humans seem to believe that every chapter should already be written before the story has had a chance to unfold. Maybe that's why we spend so much of our lives searching for certainty instead of learning to trust the journey itself. Perhaps the greatest pressure we've placed upon ourselves is believing we should already know who we are, know where we're going, know exactly how everything will turn out. But what if life has never asked that of us? What if instead of having all the answers, if only asked us to stay curious enough to keep walking? So before we go any further, I'd like to leave you with a question. Not one you need to answer today, just one to carry gently with you. What if you are not lost at all? What if you are simply standing in the middle of a chapter that hasn't finished being written yet? Let's stay with that thought for a little while. Perhaps one of the greatest illusions of adulthood is believing that everyone else knows what they are doing. We look around, and it seems as though everyone has a plan. They know where they're going, what career they want, who they're becoming, what the next 5 years will look like. But what if we quietly sit beside enough people and listen without judgment? You might discover something surprising. Behind successful careers, there are unanswered questions. Behind confident smiles, there are quiet doubts. Behind carefully planned lives, there are unexpected detours. The truth is, most people are simply taking their next best step, just like you. Perhaps certainty has always been an illusion. Life has never promised us a straight road. It has always been full of unexpected turns, new beginnings, unexpected endings, people arriving, people leaving, dreams changing shape. Not because we failed, but because we're alive, and life is moment. I sometimes think about walking along the shoreline. When you look ahead, you can see the curve of the beach stretching into the distance. But you never see the whole coastline. The horizon quietly keeps its secrets. No matter how far you walk, there is always another bend you cannot see yet. Yet somehow, that doesn't stop us enjoying the walk. We don't stand still because we can't see the final destination. We simply keep putting one foot in front of the other. Perhaps life was always meant to feel a little like that. The sea reminded me of something else that evening. Every wave disappears, and yet the ocean never panics. It never believes that because one wave has reached the shore, there will never be another. It trusts the rhythm again and again. I wonder how different our lives might feel if we trusted our own seasons half as much as the sea trusts its tides. There is something beautifully freeing about admitting, I don't know. not as defeat, but as an opening. I don't know who I'll become. I don't know what opportunities are waiting around the next corner. I don't know which conversation will quietly change my life. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. Those words can sound frightening until we realize they also leave room for wonderful surprises. After all, some of the most meaningful chapters of your life were probably never planned. The people who became your closest friends, the places that stole your heart, the moments you still smile about years later. Many of them arrived without an invitation, without a schedule, without you seeing them coming. So perhaps the future doesn't need us to predict it. Perhaps it simply asks us to stay open enough to recognize it when it arrives. And maybe that's why we can never fully know the path ahead. Because if we already knew every twist, every joy, every heartbreak, every person we'd meet, life would stop being an adventure. It would become itinerary. So let me leave you with another gentle thought to carry into your next part. What if the chapters you cannot see yet are not empty pages? What if they're simply waiting to surprise you? Let's stay with that for a while. Perhaps the greatest moment in your life have never arrived because you finally had everything figured out. Perhaps they arrived because you kept going anyway. Think back for a moment, not to your plans, but to your memories, the people who changed your life, the places that took your breath away, the conversations that stayed with you for years. How many of them did you see coming? Probably very few. Life has always been quietly writing chapters, while we were busy trying to write the ending. I sometimes wonder how many beautiful possibilities we've missed because we believe we weren't ready. We wait until we're more confident, more experienced, more certain, until fear has completely disappeared. But perhaps courage has never meant the absence of fear. Perhaps courage has always been taking one gentle step while uncertainty walks beside us. As I watch the sun sink slowly into the sea, something occurred to me. The horizon never reveals tomorrow's sunrise. It simply holds today's sunset with extraordinary grace. There was something deeply comforting about that. The sea wasn't trying to hold on to the light. neither was the sky. They trusted that morning would return, even though they couldn't yet see it. I wonder, what if we treated our own lives with that same quiet trust? There are seasons when life feels beautifully clear, and there are seasons when everything feels uncertain. Neither season lasts forever. Winter doesn't apologize for arriving. Spring doesn't force the flowers to bloom before they're ready. The tide doesn't rush back because someone is impatient. Nature never confuses waiting with failure. Perhaps we shouldn't either. Maybe the version of you reading this chapter of life today isn't behind. Maybe you're growing roots before anyone can see the leaves. Some of the most important parts of becoming happen quietly, invisible, patiently, long before the world notices anything has changed. We often celebrate blooming, but very few people celebrate becoming. And yet, becoming asks far more of us. It asks us to trust, to keep learning, to let go of old version of ourselves, to begin again, without knowing exactly where the path will lead. Perhaps that's why uncertainty feels so uncomfortable. Not because it means something is wrong, but because it asks us to trust something we cannot see yet. And maybe that is one life's quietest invitations, to stop asking, when will I finally have all the answers? And begin asking, who am I becoming while I keep walking? Because perhaps that question has always mattered more. So before we continue, I'd like to leave you with another gentle thought. What if you don't need to become someone who never feels uncertain? What if you simply become someone who no longer lets uncertainty stop them from living? Let's stay with that for just a little longer. Perhaps the greatest peace doesn't come from finally having all the answers. Perhaps it comes from no longer believing you need them. One day, without even noticing, you'll look back at this chapter of your life, this chapter that feels uncertain today, the one filled with questions, the one where wished someone could simply tell you what to do. And you'll realize it wasn't the chapter that broke you. It was the chapter that quietly introduced you to yourself. Life has a gentle way of making sense, but rarely in the moment. More often, it reveals its reasons only when we pause long enough to look behind us. The path that once seemed confusing suddenly becomes clear. The difficult season becomes the one that taught us resilience. The unexpected goodbye makes room for an unexpected hello. The road we never planned to take becomes the one we wouldn't exchange for any other. Not because it was easy, but because it became part of who we are. As the last light disappeared beyond the horizon, the sea didn't clinch to the day. It didn't resist the coming night. It simply welcomed the next part of the journey. Watching that sunset, I realized something I hope I'll remember for the rest of my life. The sea has never needed to know where every wave will end. It simply keeps returning again and again. Perhaps there is a wisdom in that, not rushing, not resisting, simply trusting that another tide will come. Maybe today you don't know what comes next. Maybe you're standing between two chapters. Maybe you're beginning again. Maybe you're letting go. Maybe you're still searching for a place that feels like home. And if that's where you are, I hope you know this. You are not behind. You are not failing. And you are certainly not alone. You are simply living a part of the story where the next page hasn't been turned yet. Perhaps the most meaningful lives were never built by people who knew exactly where they were going. Perhaps they were built by ordinary people who kept choosing the next honest step, even when they couldn't see the whole path. So, whatever this reflection finds you today, I hope you carry one gentle thought with you. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to predict tomorrow. You don't have to solve your whole life before breakfast on a Monday morning. Sometimes all life asks is that you keep showing up with an open heart and a curious mind and enough courage to take one more step. Because perhaps the future has never been something we're meant to control. Perhaps it's something we're meant to discover. And maybe one day you'll find yourself sitting somewhere beautiful, watching a sunset, remembering this season of uncertainty. And instead of wishing it had never happened, you'll quietly smile because you'll realize it led you exactly where you need to be. Thank you for spending this quiet time with me. Until next time, take gentle care of your mind.